Just recently I was speaking at a Cody Sanchez event that she had invited me over to, one of her masterminds for her highest level people. It was pretty crazy, by the way. There was a lady there that had sold feed to cattle farms that was doing more than $100 million. There was another guy doing more than $100 million in like logistics. So maybe we're all doing the wrong thing of selling these high ticket products and services. But hey, in the meantime, we're here to talk about hitting $1 million months. And one of the things that I was chirping about at that specific mastermind was this concept of which funnels are correlated to less friction and higher friction and how that correlates with intent. This is a handful of very valuable lessons that I want to make sure you guys here on YouTube know about, because these are very commonly applied principles when we're thinking of what specific funnels, conversion mechanisms, advertising strategies we need to deploy to add that next million a month or to get to $1 million a month on different client deals. So if you're new here, that's all we talk about on this channel is hitting $1 million months. Welcome in. Pleasure to have you. No income claims though. You're not gonna watch these videos and then go out there and make buku bucks or anything like that. Your probability to make any money is probably fuck all. Because who knows your potential and your talent level and who you are sitting here watching this? I sure don't. But again, all we're doing around here is handing down top lessons from the businesses that have been there, done that, hit $1 million a month, added the next $1 million a month, passing them down to you. So no income claims, no earning potential, just straight lessons. And of course, if you're already a subscriber, welcome back. Absolute pleasure to have you here per usual. Got a banger for you. Without further ado, let's get started. So let me be clear when I say this, okay? The less friction that you have in a funnel typically creates a higher volume of people coming through. But unless you got a fleet of absolute killers on that sales team, you're gonna have a bad time. So as an example of this, one of my favorite strategies that I like to run when I have a team of killers, I call it the Hydra. It leverages lead forms inside of the ad channel. So like think Facebook and Instagram lead forms as an example, TikTok lead forms, etc. Except I add conditional logic to it and some other best practices. That's why I name it something different rather than just talking about lead forms. However, okay, this puts a tremendous amount of fucking work onto the sales team. Thus why you have to have some serious hitters on the other side of it. Salespeople that are willing to make a tremendous amount of calls, texts, follow-ups. We typically deploy this strategy when we work with raising capital clients. And we do that because less friction funnels can typically lead to more qualified leads that are just really fucking rich. So in this case, going after people who are accredited investors that have, low end tens of thousands of dollars, upwards millions of dollars, they typically respond better to lower friction funnels. Okay? In comparison, I'm not gonna sit here and say we don't get high qualified people through higher friction funnels, but you'll see why as I continue throughout this video, you're gonna get less and less, especially the higher up the friction spectrum you go. But without digressing too much, back to my point, when we work with raising capital clients and we deploy the Hydra, this lead form strategy, I'll set the expectation they're gonna need to try to reach out to people on average 20 times before they establish an initial connection. That means calls, texts, value-driven follow-up, sending sales assets, trust assets, emails, etc. 20 different attempts just to establish contact. In addition to that, I then set a further expectation it's gonna take 12 meetings on average. 12 in order to raise capital from these specific individuals. And in terms of timeline, I typically say that can take from 3 to 6 months. Super long duration of time, super high level of sales output required in order to get that strategy to really have effectiveness. But we get way more leads to come through on a lower friction strategy comparatively to an extremely high friction strategy. So if we work our way up the spectrum a little bit and we get a little less leads, but a slightly higher intent lead, we work our way up to call funnels. So VSL call funnels, in my opinion, are a low friction strategy. They can typically generate inbound applicants that have a decent level of intention. They fill out an application, they then schedule a call. Sometimes for some of you, they just don't fill out an application and they only schedule a call. That would obviously reduce the friction a fair bit. But in my world, I have them fill out an application, I leverage conditional logic. People who are qualified are then allowed to schedule a call. I'm optimizing the campaign around the qualified scheduled calls that come in. Lower friction, I can get a lot of good qualified people to schedule calls with the sales team in this example, but I still have to do a lot of stuff to help increase intent, okay? And that's one of the other things I'm gonna talk about here briefly throughout this video at different points is some of these lower friction funnels, they'll typically bring in lower intent leads. And the higher up the friction spectrum you go, you can bring in, not always, you can bring in higher intention buyers. So let me be really clear when I say this. A higher intent buyer can come through generally at any time relative to the messaging best practices that you deploy and how good your offer is, how in demand your offer is, whether you're communicating towards in-market demographics versus broader, more like needs convinced and just mass market demographics, period. So all kinds of things can impact intent, okay? And we're gonna talk about that. But I can't stress it enough. Generally, the lower the friction, the lower the intent, okay? That's generally the best practice that you have to consider when you're solely looking at the type of funnel correlated to friction, okay? Important to note, but again, can be influenced by many different variables. So as an example, we can couple a lower friction strategy with a higher intent back-end selling system strategy. So one thing that we'll typically do to increase intent, and let me just give you a different perspective on that so we can visualize it here together. When we look at the highest intention, the best qualified people showing up just ready to buy, we compare that to the total opposite end of the spectrum, which is really low intent. Like you gotta convince them, barely gonna show up, barely gonna respond, things like that. We have essentially information that creates a tremendous difference in somebody taking an action, coming through higher intent or coming through with much lower intent. And information can vary from a tremendous amount of things being learned and known to just one key thing. So I'll give you a great example. Just recently, I was at Lopez's farm out in Virginia. I was being a good old country boy. By the way, can't remember the name of the song, but the guy George Strait, incredible country music artist, definitely play some of his essentials while you're out there in the backwoods, Blue Ridge Mountains if you ever get the opportunity. What a vibe. But back to the point. I was sitting there with Ty, and Ty, I don't know his exact age. I don't know if anybody knows Ty's age, but long story short, older than me. I know that, older than me. And Ty is jacked, fit, healthy, happy. He lives by those four, whatever he calls them, the health, wealth, love, happiness thing. And I asked him, I was like, Ty, when is a good opportunity to get on some injectables? Like you seem like you're more than rich enough and well connected to the point where you likely got your health routine dialed the fuck in. Are you on injectables? Like, what do you recommend to do? And he was like, there's this company, and I don't remember the exact name of the company. I think it was called like start with an M Health, M and then the word health. And he goes, $5,000 a quarter. I would hit these guys up. That's who I use. They'll help dial you in. They'll look at your blood work on a quarterly basis, pay them for the comprehensive panel that they have. You'll talk to their medical professionals and they'll work with you on exactly what kind of injectable routine, if any, you need to get on, and they'll help dial you in. That's what I do on an every 90-day rolling basis. I sit there and I get this blood work done, and then I dial in whatever it is that they tell me to do, and as a result, I feel great. He peppers in a few other things, obviously, from all the people that he's hired and paid over the years, but that was the general premise that I got out of that answer. Now, to be clear, from there, I go to this M Health. I don't remember the name of it. There's a full word, not just the letter M. But I go to this company's website on the spot, and I book a call. Okay? Now, to be clear, they didn't do anything in terms of a best practice that we sit here and yap about on this channel, okay? They did no back-end selling systems. They didn't have any confirmation page breakout videos. They didn't have any value-dense email sequences. Their salespeople didn't reach out to me a singular time prior to the call. It was exclusively the automated texts and automated emails telling me and reminding me to show up. That was all they had in terms of a best practice, okay? And at least they did that. However, I showed up with a really high level of intention because I had a key piece of information, okay? A person that I look up to as a mentor and I respect and that I know makes fucking infinite money. And I've learned a tremendous amount from and benefited from taking the advice of this individual over the years. Told me, hey, $5K a quarter, go sign up with these guys. This is what I use. I didn't need to know anything else. That was the singular piece of information that drove me to take the action. But I can't stress this enough. If I was just like you right now, becoming aware of this random company that I can't even remember the name of. That's how little they followed up with me. That's how poor their specific, essentially back-end selling systems were. They did fuck all to try to improve the odds of me showing up and even just doing something as simple as remembering their name, okay? But I still looked forward to the call, even though it was more than a week out from the time that I booked, because I had a critical piece of information, okay? That was what drove the action in that case. In most instances, especially when you're doing cold paid advertising, which is the #1 way to have true scale potential. We have several videos dedicated on this channel solely to cold paid advertising best practices. I'd encourage you to go check them out. That's where true scale occurs. I digress. Point I'm trying to make is when you are doing any type of paid advertising, let alone cold paid advertising, obviously people are going to come through with a critical referral who told them something specific and said like, yeah, go sign up with these guys. Like that's not gonna happen. Instead, what occurs is you typically bring people through on different levels of the interest spectrum. Okay, we've talked about this on this channel many times over, where I like to say there's 4 levels of interest, okay? There's curious, there's general, there is highly interested, and then there is convicted, okay? And typically convicted, anything above here, this is where deals get done, okay? Most leads that are on the lower end of the friction spectrum, like lead forms, even VSL call funnel leads, these types of leads can come through more so in the curious and general interest buckets than anything else. And when you correlate the interest spectrum to this intention graph, I can't stress this enough. It's like the friction spectrum, the intent spectrum, and this interest chart, however you want to verbalize that. This is all correlated together. So like as an example, lead forms are way down here. Like they typically bring in lower intent, okay? Call funnels, same kind of thing. Like they can typically bring in lower intent. So this is important to understand, okay? I can bring in somebody that's at a lower level of intention. And through information, critical information, piece by piece or that one critical piece, I can increase the intent. So it's important to note, although I might have a lead originate lower intent, okay, I can move them up the spectrum a single piece of information at a time. So I can bring a call funnel lead all the way up here to a much higher level of intention, and I can at the same time dramatically increase their interest level. So rather than them coming in at a curious interest level, my job through information is to do 2 things. It's to increase their interest level, which is where actions get done. That's where deals get done at convicted levels of interest. And at the same time, I can increase their intent to where they're more probable to show up. They're more probable to be excited about whatever it is that you're selling. They're just more ready to buy. They're more likely to pay in full. See, it's like I showed up with the frame to that call with the whatever the fucking health company was called, and I was ready to go. Like, I was a laydown deal, simply put, because I had a critical piece of information. And this is where most people really fuck up. When they look at the friction spectrum specifically, and they don't couple it with the intention spectrum and the interest spectrum, what ends up happening is you default to high friction funnels because, yes, high friction funnels can naturally bring in a higher intention lead. That's what my whole message is I'm trying to communicate to you here today. There are plenty of other ways that you can increase intention through back-end selling systems. Like if you do confirmation page videos successfully, if you do, and I can't stress this enough, value dense email sequences, hammer them strategies, and you have your salespeople doing some of the best practices that they can manually do. And those are just 4 examples of back-end selling systems right there. I can dramatically improve the odds that somebody shows up with much higher intention. Generally, and this is the idea that these people who default to, I've got to do higher friction funnels, I've got to add friction, that's what's going to increase the quantity and the quantity of people who show up higher intent. You default to that view because all you focus on is front-end selling. You understand? It's like, yes, front-end selling is important. Yes, I have a whole fuckload of best practices that I follow when it comes to front-end selling. But at the same time, I will not defer to exclusively using high friction funnels on the front end because I can't bring in higher intention leads through lower friction funnels that are gonna have higher volume. I do both. And that ultimately creates a tremendous level of scale that most of you really miss out on because you fail to be able to do the things that bring in much higher volumes and increase intention with those people that come through at a higher pace through a lower friction funnel. That's the moral of the story. So as an example, it's like as we work our way up this friction spectrum, just to give you some more examples of some other funnels quickly, when we look at one of the examples of the highest friction funnels that I've successfully ran and generated a few million bucks through, we have an entire video on this channel dedicated to challenge funnels, which can also be framed as virtual events, okay? So as an example, if I did a 3-day, virtual event, AKA a challenge funnel, I am doing a lot, like especially a paid, let me be really clear on that, a paid 3-day virtual event, a paid challenge funnel. I'm gonna charge people to show up and dedicate 3 full days of their time for several hours per day to watch my content and get pitched. You understand? It's like, this is where you have to also, back to my original point I was attempting to make, with I can get a lot more financially qualified people through lower friction funnels, I'm gonna have a really troublesome time getting very financially qualified people through a high friction funnel, because this is really important to understand about selling to rich people. And by the way, we also have an entire playlist dedicated on this channel just to selling to the rich people, advertising to the rich people, offers for rich people, VSLs for rich people, etc. Go check out that playlist on my channel after you watch this video and some of the other videos I recommended. They're all really good. Anyway, back to my point at hand, okay? I'm not gonna get a fuckload of rich people who barely have any time to buy a ticket to a 3-day virtual event and spend 3 full days with me just to hear my pitch for my high ticket offer. That's just not gonna happen at a high rate. It's gonna happen occasionally, but at a very, very low rate. I am way more probable to have very financially well-off people come through lower friction funnels because they don't have time, but they have money. They're also way more direct. Again, there's a whole set of best practices dedicated in a playlist on this channel that you can go watch. I won't sit here and rant about that or yap about that, but I can't stress it enough. Very important you understand that if you're going for richer demographics. Now, to be fair, I've had many clients that have run challenge funnels with $10,000 to $30,000 offers. We even had one client that did listen to this crazy shit, 9-day challenge. They would do it every other month. They would do about 1.4 to like $2.5 million per challenge, and they would do it mainly to an organic audience with very small, like tens of thousands of dollars in paid ads. They would do a paid challenge, make people buy a ticket, and for 9 full days, they would just value dump on these fuckers. And then they would pitch a $40,000 offer. Their salespeople literally could have been pulled from a cashier at a grocery store, dropped onto those phones, and successfully cash collected on those 40K deals. That's how sold those people were. So it's a high friction process, but it creates a monumental amount of intent. You see, it's like by the time that 9 days ends, the pitch has occurred, they're buying. Like they have a very, very high probability to buy, okay? So anyway, paid 3-day virtual events, one of the highest friction things you could do. I would say some of the other things that are very high friction are low ticket to high ticket. Same kind of concept, okay? When we sell something for cheap and the intention is to ascend that individual to something that's higher ticket in whatever the time frame is, I'm adding friction. I'm liquidating some of my ad dollars in that example. I'm also lowering the probability that I'm gonna get direct buyers to my high ticket thing because I put a low ticket thing right in between it. You see? So the balance here, right, is I have so many deals that we do and so many people in the Inner Circle program as an example that do a combo of all of this. And that should be the ultimate goal, is a nice balance of all of this kind of stuff, okay? And it's also really important to note, obviously we could work in some stuff in here like some DM ads, you know, and just all the other common funnels that we all run nowadays, but I can't, again, I just wanna be so super clear when I say this, okay? Like IG shout out campaigns, DM ads, lead forms, call funnels, low ticket to high ticket, challenge funnels, whatever it is that you're running. Map it on the friction spectrum and then ask yourself, like, you know, why would I only do some of these, right? Like, why wouldn't I do a combination of all of these? So for me as an example, like I like it when clients do webinars. I like it when clients have call funnels at the same time. I also like it when clients on like a quarterly basis will do challenge funnels. I like it when clients have low ticket to high ticket funnels, right? Because then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get people that just by default come in at all different ranges naturally on the intent spectrum. Like I'm gonna get people that should be relatively strong, highly probable to close layup deals. You understand? And then at the same time, I'm gonna get people that the salespeople are absolutely gonna bitch and moan about if they talk to them too early in the process. Then I'm gonna get some people right in the sweet spot in the middle that come through that are slightly longer deal cycles. There's things that we could do to work them up through time. And I like to have a balance of these because here's why. The lowest tier people, the people who have the lowest tier on the intent spectrum, I can naturally get their interest levels up and their intent higher by introducing, I can't stress this enough, guys, information, okay? Information is what creates the fucking monumental difference nowadays. And information comes in all different shapes and sizes. It comes in consumables, it comes in trust assets, it comes in sales assets, it comes in conversations with the salespeople, okay? It comes in long form consumption. It comes in short form consumption. It comes through going through other funnels that they didn't originate from. It comes from email marketing, okay? And there's many, many more. But again, I can't stress it enough, like information, okay? This specifically, this is what makes the difference to the level of intent. So think about this, right? If I get somebody to consume a fuckload of material prior to making a pitch, the probability goes up so much they're gonna buy, right? If I get somebody that comes through a lead form that has their information pre-populated in it and all they gotta do is tap a button, they're gonna come through much lower intent. But they're also, in most instances, probable to be pretty rich if I got my messaging and front-end systems dialed in. From there, in order to get all of this information to them, I have to package it up in these back-end selling systems, okay? And I have to be able to successfully distribute the information prior to the conversation happening with the sales rep. That's the key. If you let people, the leads, talk to the sales team before you warm them up and get their intention higher, get their interest levels higher, you're gonna have a bad time. You're gonna have lower statistics. You're gonna have some whiny fucking salespeople, okay? If I get this level of interest at a highly interested level, a convicted level, even a general interest level, through getting information to the individual prior to that sales conversation, we're gonna have a good time. We're gonna make a fuckload more money, okay? We're gonna be able to keep our balls on the table longer and make bigger bets and make some serious fucking cash, okay? So anyway, long story short, join into the Inner Circle program. If you're above 100K a month, there's a link down in the description. I go through every single thing you would need to know from a back-end selling system perspective, from a front-end selling system perspective, all the best practices with so many examples for all these different funnels that we just talked about. And I will also, in that specific offer, directly hold you accountable to not fucking it up so you get some good results, okay? Make sure you check that out if you are financially qualified to be able to do so and ready to commit. We're excited to welcome you in if so. And if not, check out my Master Internet Marketing Program. It's my version of a low-ticket product at $5,000, okay? But easy money to make back, to be fair. It's a one-time lifetime cost. You get access to it for every single live class that we ever do with no additional cost to you. You get some AI Jeremy access peppered in there. You get access to the immediate historical cohort recordings that we've done, a huge training library, a very active community. And we got our next live cohort coming up here later this summer. So typically do it on an annual basis, and that time of the year has officially come. Enough has changed in marketing to go back, update the entire thing, and make it better for the members. So very excited for everybody that is already a part of that. And if you're not a part of it, consider joining in with the link down in the description of this video. At the very least, subscribe to the channel, go check out some of those other banging videos that I recommended, and go get richer. Talk soon.